All right, there's the bell. Welcome to class. Well, hey, so here I am in my room. No mask. I know. I'll have the mask tomorrow. Nope, wrong. Wednesday when you all show up. But I thought we'd continue. Maybe figure out a way to move on a little bit and make some good progress and cover information. So today, I thought I would discuss and lecture a little bit about the second part of this unit. This being Unit 3, and we're going to look at the Reformation today. We looked at the Renaissance last class. Today we're going to look at the Reformation. Tomorrow we'll take a look at absolutism. And then when I see you, we'll talk about the gunpowder empires in preparation for the end of this unit test. All right, so here we go. So the Reformation, by and large, is a Northern European phenomenon, hence the circle of Northern Europe. Now, that is not the Northern Europe of the Reformation. For one thing, Germany doesn't exist. The Netherlands belongs to Spain. You'll see. And there is no Italy. All right, so let's go. I always do that. All right. So some changes that allow some byproducts of the Renaissance and some technological changes that allow this event to occur. Starting with the only one that matters. That's right. Well, first of all, printing itself using block letters is Chinese, which stands to reason because almost everything was Chinese. It was developed in China and Korea around the 9th and 12th centuries. This technology, as well as paper making, allowed for us to have scrolls and early books, whether it be ancient China, ancient Greece, whether it be during the Crusades in the Middle Ages, in anywhere really. But those were all handwritten and laborious and very, very expensive. In fact, there's a lot of text out there, a lot of stories, a lot of history, a lot of information that we'll probably never know because paper was so expensive that in the monasteries that the monks who were the scribes would actually scratch out old text and then write over it. So there are things that we're never going to know about. But we know something's going to happen. Something's going to happen. Oh, okay. Yeah, that's great. There it is. My man, Gutenberg. There it is. That's right. About 1450, three innovations helped in this process that led to the Reformation. Johann Gutenberg's movable type, the printing press, and ink suitable for printing on paper. These three things from our good friend Johann Gutenberg from Mainz allowed this to occur. We could now print books effectively, efficiently, more cost effectively. They're still pricey. They're still not for everybody yet. There's no, dime store novel yet. But the fact that we can get information on paper out is a big deal. And the first book printed was the Gutenberg Bible. That's right. That's how important he is. And now my lovely little mug is blocking text. All right, so I'm going to pull me down here. Okay. This printing boom contributed to the growth of a couple of things. One, humanism, that concept from a couple of days ago, talking about how, looking at ourselves as people, looking at the humanities, that's where the term comes from. It allowed universities to develop in Europe. And because we're printing Bibles, it's going to give fertile soil, fertile ground for those people who want to eventually look more critically at the Catholic Church. All right. Here's our man. This is, as I'm moving out of the way again, all right, that's Martin Luther. He is one of the founders and fathers of the Reformation. And, looking at the word itself, the act of, because that's what shun is, the act of. Is this going to work? Yes, that is the act of. And then to reform is to redo, to remake. So really, and then as you can see here in Protestant, you can see the root protest. So this is really a small group of people who got together and began to protest the way the Catholic Church was behaving and wanted to look at reforming the church, not changing it, not making a new church, just reforming the Catholic Church in a different way. Okay, so the act of reforming. The Protestants are a protest movement. They're a protest group. Okay, continuing. And like I said, a Protestant is any Christian who's not Catholic. Could be Baptist, could be Lutheran, could be Methodist, could be Calvinist, could be Mormon, could be, I don't know, anything not Catholic. And remember, Eastern Orthodox is technically Catholic. And again, the Protestant Reformation, you're protesting, changing church, trying to reform it, make it better. And these are your three key players. Martin Luther, or the ones we're going to talk about. Martin Luther, John Calvin, that's right, Henry VIII. I am. Henry VIII is actually a reformer. I never thought about it that way. All right, moving on. Remember, because you're taking notes, because this is recorded, if you need to pause, no offense taken. All right, I'll move again. So, why were they upset? Well, because the church was blurring the lines between who had the authority. It was without question who had your soul's authority. But authority on earth was always an issue. There's always a bone of contention. And the political power was being, especially in the Italian states, was being kind of wrestled over between the Italian princes and the church. The church was all about money making. The Catholic Church was a big money making entity. They built lots and lots and lots of churches. They owned lots and lots and lots of land. In fact, when the Catholic Church is at its zenith, at its height as far as power and importance, 25% of all the land of west of Europe is in the hands of the Catholic Church. Let's see, what else? As you can see, the churches plotted against kings who spoke out against them. Philip IV of France was arrested by Pope Boniface in 1302, and they sold indulgences. You pay the Pope money, gives you a piece of paper, and that got you out of purgatory quicker. Yay! Okay, and for those of you who aren't sure, and I'll try and hopefully say this correctly, in the Catholic world, when you live your life, you die, and then you go to basically a transitionary stage. You go to purgatory, and purgatory is where if I understand correctly, your soul is judged, and then you either go to heaven or to hell. It's not die and then go. There's an intermediary stage, and if you were wealthy, because this is pretty much a wealthy person's gig, if you were wealthy, you could pay your way basically out of purgatory more quickly and into heaven. And yeah, and it's going to get worse. And this thing here, the indulgences were sort of like the final straw for Martin Luther, because to him that just seemed obscenely wrong. All right. So an indulgence, yeah, I'm in a painting. Yay! Look, I'm a work of art in a work of art. Aha! Okay. Anyway, so in the authority of all saints and in compassion towards thee, I absolve thee from all sins and misdeeds and remit all punishments for 10 days. So you're absolved from all your sins. And if you were, and I guess if you were sentenced to a punishment, you were let go for 10 days. Now, I guess you could pay in advance and then be jerked the rest of your life. Like, I don't know. But again, it's that kind of stuff that really got Martin Luther upset. So the priest commissioned in Germany to promote and sell indulgences was Johann Tetzel. Tetzel made a lot of money on the indulgences. And as I said before, indulgences were a rich person's pardon. If you were a poor person, you didn't have enough money to make it worth the church's while. But if you gave an indulgence, they may say a prayer for you or pardon you for something. But if it was a major, major, major offense, you had to have major, major, major coin. At least that's how I understand this. So this was just a way for the rich to get richer. I mean, it looks like there's no statute of limitations on privilege. So Zetzel is also somebody that Martin Luther takes issue with. Some Catholic clergy, in part influenced by the ideas of the Renaissance, began to, live Renaissance lives. They began to love the good life, love fine clothing, love fine food. They, again, 25% of all the land in Europe at one point is in their hands. It They really, really, really just it seems just abuse their authority, and they abuse their position to live a life totally counter to how they're supposed to live their lives. And again, these are the things that Martin Luther and John Calvin and others began to see and began to question and began to wonder. And again, the other thing that comes out of the printing press, aside from being the greatest invention of all time, is that as the cost of text goes down, more text gets in people's hands. And the other big thing that came out during that time in the printing press is the whole idea of the rise of printing in the vernacular, the rise of printing in the language of the local people. Remember, Dante is alleged to be the founder of Italian because he wrote in that language, German and English, which is a Germanic language, but and French. But the local languages begin to find their way into print because remember, everything associated with the Catholic Church is in Latin, so you can't read Latin. So whatever the Pope says, that's his interpretation. Whatever the priest says, that's their interpretation of the Bible. Well, now you can read and you can begin to interpret things on your own, and that's what's going on here. Slowly, a small group of people again, but the idea that I can read this and and decide for myself, what matters is a big deal. The alienation was further aggravated by the presence of many poorly educated priests and monks. So people would join the priesthood. First of all, you could. Sometimes they would take children, and then you would offer a child for to the church. You actually give one of your children to the church. To a boy, obviously, a son goes to the church. And then they are raised in the church and they are raised to be a priest. So that's one way priests were made. But some other men just went and ran to the priesthood because it was a steady gig, for lack of a better word. They weren't necessarily literate. They weren't necessarily devout or deeply, in tune with God, but it provided security. So there were a lot of priests who couldn't even read the text, who didn't understand it or go out and know how to talk to the people. So there was this growing frustration too about that, about priests and monks who just were illiterate, priests and monks who didn't know or teach the word. This becomes a problem. Pope Leo X in 1517. Here you go. Here's our date. Authorized the sale of indulgences to fund a church. Again, St. Peter's Cathedral in Rome. We need funding. Today, if you need funding, the local government writes a bond, and people vote yes or no on a bond, and then the government gets money up front, and then taxes are paid over time to make up the money for the bond. But that's how governments get money up front to build right away. Here, we're going to get our cash by telling people, we got you a get into heaven free card. And we're going to sell get into heaven free cards. And that's what these indulgences were. And that was, like I said, Martin Luther's last straw. It was a pardon for sins. It allowed you the responsibility of having to behave, of having to be a good person and do good works. Catholics were given the impression that this is all you needed. So the way it was sold and the way it was conveyed, it really undercut the teachings of Jesus, of how the church is supposed to behave, how you as a Christian are supposed to behave, and all of this just kind of builds and builds and builds. And then finally, oh yeah, this is a nice little saying: when the coin in the coffer rings, the soul from purgatory springs. So you put money in the jar, you ring the bell, and up you go. 1517, Martin Luther, a German monk, a professor, becomes a catalyst for the Protestant Reformation. He became troubled over the possibility of not going to heaven because, again, think about that. You spend your whole life in the Catholic Church. You think you're doing the right things. You think you're doing the right things, and it seems like the Catholic Church is moving the goalposts. Okay, well now you do this, and now you do this, and yes, you're supposed to live this way, but pay no attention to how I'm living over here. And he begins to worry that because he begins to worry that what he's doing, as he understands it, is going to keep him from heaven. He turned to the Bible and confession for comfort. So again, he returns to the Bible for tech, and since he turns to the Bible for answers, he, the reader, is going to ascertain his own sort of understanding. We can all read the same book, even this textbook, and we're all going to highlight or underline or put a star next or make a comment about something different, because something different is going to reach each of us because the lens with which we're viewing, this text is ours, and we bring our history to this. So he and everybody who's reading the Bible on their own, because remember too, the Catholic Church is saying if you want to talk to God, you have to go through us. You talk to the priest, you confess your sins, so this intermediary step is something else that's troubling him as well. And there he is again. He just looks somber, doesn't he? All right, so the righteous shall by his faith. Luther realized that only faith. So in Romans 1:17 is his catalyst. He realizes that only faith, not good deeds, could save a person. You could behave as great as you want. You could be the nicest person, charityist given person, adopt a stray person, whatever. If you don't have faith, it does not matter. And this flies in the face of the Catholic Church, because the Catholic Church was all about deeds. What can you do to earn your way into heaven? And as he understands it for himself, you don't earn it. You just accept, and there you go. Now, other groups, all these other, within the Protestant faith, all these other denominations that pop up, all view things differently. John Wesley in the Methodist faith, in the Methodist denomination, is faith, but also work. You have an obligation as a Christian to go and do things. The Methodists are really big on missions. A lot of different denominations are too, but that's a big part of Methodism. All right. So he has 95 complaints about the Catholic Church, and he goes to, there he is. That's from the movie. And he goes, and he nails them to a door in Wittenberg, Germany. These are some of the complaints he has. Yes, as you can see, Gutenberg's press is involved because it matters. The Pope's power vexes him. Why is the church so wealthy? Where should that money go? What should that money be put towards? The indulgences and a bunch of other things, but 95 issues Martin Luther has with the church. Nails them on a door in Wittenberg on Halloween 1517. Look at that. That's kind of cool. And then he also passed them out to people on the streets, which he could do because he could make multiple copies, because of Gutenberg. The church was unhappy. What? The church was unhappy, but the people liked it. So if you're the Catholic Church and you've got this, look, here we go. See what happens when you're a troublemaker and stir things up? Well, what can the Catholic Church do to somebody who's causing problems with the Catholic Church? Well, there are two things. And I'm pretty sure you know one. One is to excommunicate, and the other is to interdict. Anyway, I was going to write it on the board, but then I realized you probably wouldn't. All right, so Luther gets put on trial at the Diet of Worms. A diet is a group. It is not a caloric issue. Diet is a group of people. 1520, Leo X says you must give up your beliefs. Luther burned the order to appear, and he was excommunicated. There's the first term, which means he is not kind of kicked out of the church, but he's denied the sacraments. And that's a big deal. He's kicked out of the Catholic Church. He goes into hiding. He goes and translates the entire New Testament into the vernacular, into German. And again, because now more people further down the social scale can read it, it helps his cause. It helps get the word out. There's Luther on trial. Thank you very much. I'll be a cardinal. Okay, there's Luther on trial pleading his case. Luther received wide support from who? Who do you think would support Luther in this endeavor? Who? What group of people would be like, yeah, I like this idea? Well, uh, German nationalists, people who saw themselves as German and had the idea of German nationhood, they liked it because they resented the taxes imposed by the Pope. They resented the power and authority of the Pope that he had on their lives. So for that group of people, Martin Luther was a welcome voice. German princes saw as an opportunity because the Holy Roman Empire was the Catholic princes again, because this would be a way to gain independence from the church and to take away church land. So now you have princes who are sympathetic to him for not necessarily spiritual means, but for opportunistic means, for a way to curtail the power of the church over their lives and their authority, so that they can return to being the authority in their area and get more land for themselves. So not all, the most honorable motivations, but if you are going to be an outspoken opponent of the Catholic Church, having friends in the higher places is not necessarily a bad idea. Okay. Luther suggested that state control of the church as an alternative to papal authority, which sounded good to the princes. In other words, the church is in every state, in what would become France and what would become England, whatever it already is in England. But in those places, that government would oversee those churches. Pope is still the head of the Catholic Church, but as far as local authority, the local leadership should have authority over the churches to again kind of curtail the church's power. Because remember, one of Martin Luther's biggest issues with the Catholic Church is the power that it is exuding on the people. Peasants saw the attack on authority as sanctioning of their own rebellions. Okay, so this happens a lot because of Martin Luther and the Reformation. There are peasant uprisings that begin to take place in various spots of Europe because now they see it. Look, we've been getting shafted more than anybody. We had the short end of the stick for as long as there's been sticks, and here's a chance for us to improve our station, to rebel against the landlords for unfair rents, for a lack of opportunity, for all the things that landlords did. And notice that Lord is in there. I'll bet you this is a feudalism, a manorialism word. I'll bet you. Anyway, landlord. If faith was the main way to salvation, then money making was okay. Okay, so this is another interesting yet bad maybe thing or not thing, but this is just another take that comes out of this movement. Look, and this is probably what's driving the process in a lot of these people, especially the higher ups, okay, especially these people. If Luther's correct, and I just need to believe, well, then as long as I'm faithful, I can make all the money I want, which again probably led landlords to be more unscrupulous, and which again is going to feed the peasant revolt. So again, there is an awful lot going on here between maybe there's spiritual reasons, but all these reasons don't seem to be, to me, godly Catholic Christian reasons. They all seem to be self-preservation reasons. And for what that's worth, that's just one thing. I mean, it doesn't matter. Anyway, we'll just leave it at that. I just find this is an awful lot going on here. Some local German churches actually accepted Luther's ideas, and Lutheranism is formed. The Lutheran Church and the Calvinist Church are the first two Protestant churches of any importance. Now that he has support from the princes, he launches a formal protest against the Catholic Church. And the reformers came to be known as Protestants or Protestants. They're protesting, hence Protestants. So Protestantism is born. Dun, dun, dun. All you got to do is have the right backing. Just ask Muhammad. All right. I'm fed up with the world and it with me. I'm like a ripe stool, and the world is like a gigantic anus, and so we're about to let go of each other. Those are Martin Luther's dying words. That's lovely. Oh, that's not. There we go. Nope. Refuse. Okay. So take that for what it's worth. All right. Here is our world. This is Europe before the Protestant Reformation, obviously, just all Catholic. This is Europe after the Protestant Reformation. Note, if you will, where it's blue. You got England. Oh, actually, you have the United Kingdom, because it's the 4 countries in the United Kingdom. You have Scandinavia. You have what will become Germany. You have pockets, little tiny pockets of France, and the north coast here. Notice that Southern Europe is going to maintain a really hardline Roman Catholic state, Roman Catholic influence. The Italian states for obvious reasons, but then for less subtle reasons, we'll get to, not less subtle, but for other reasons, we'll get to why it is that there seems to be very little Protestantism of any major numbers south of France. Well, I mean, you have Alps here and the Pyrenees here, so there are mountains, but still, the faith-based stuff, there's a delineation between the north and the south of Europe. All right, our next person, John Calvin. He was Swiss. He was influenced by Luther. He did disagree with salvation by faith. The Calvinists believed in predestination, as I think the early Presbyterians did too. God knew everything that would happen, because if God created everything, God knows everything. The Calvinists believed in a purified, so guess who comes from the Calvins, approach to life. No drinking, no swearing, no gambling, no card playing, no dancing, no fun of any time. John Calvin is a fan of Free Willy, not a fan of free will. That's a pretty cool, okay, I like that student made emoji right there, or meme right there. I'm good with that meme right there. Free will would trigger John Calvin, especially anybody who believes in predestination is not going to be a fan of free will. I've always wondered, and this is a question I've always posed to students, so I'll pose it to you. You're my students. If that's the case, if predestination is the case, what's the motivation to behave? All right, just a thought. Some spin-offs from Calvinism. In England, we got the Puritans. In Scotland, we got the Presbyterians. In Holland, we got Dutch Reformers. In France, we got the Huguenots, not to be confused with Jason and his Argonauts. In Germany, we have the Reformed Church. Another group called the Anabaptists comes out during this time period. Anabaptists believed in the separation of church and state, so government should control this part of life. The church should be over here, and they should not commingle. The Anabaptists also did not believe in infant baptism. The Anabaptists believed that the ritual of baptism and the thought behind baptism would require you to truly understand what it is the event you are partaking. So it's a choice you have to make. So if you're going to make this choice, you should be old enough to understand the ramifications and then make that choice. So they were not a fan of that. I like that meme as well. Lutherans and Catholics both despise Calvinists. Well, why? We can talk about that later. But why would these two sects, and that's SECTS, take issue with John Calvin? And we can talk about that later. And they'd probably each be for different reasons, wouldn't you say? All right. More protests continue. Sought the participation of all believers in local church administrations, promoted wider access to government, promoted education to read the Bible. So look, this is what Protestantism is promoting and providing, that everybody in the church body has some sort of say in what the church does. It is important that we all know what the Bible says so that we can come to our own conclusions. So promoting literacy and education is an important thing. And in fact, this right here, here's a little heads up. Take this nugget with you, save it, hold it away for a push. These people and this. Here's why. And this is just a theory I have. It's just sort of a thing. The Puritans wanted everyone in their group to know the Bible. So everybody in Puritan society could read at least the Bible, men, women, children. So everybody could read. And as we've already seen, and as you're going to see when we get to the Enlightenment, when we read things for ourselves, we come up with our own understanding. And I argue that there are two reasons that the American Revolution could only happen in the North and could never happen in the South. One, the fact that the North was much more town and urban, and news was shared and people knew what was going on more. And two, everybody could read. And when you can read all kinds of things, and you can develop your own opinions, and you begin thinking about how things affect your lives. And so all of that goes back to this period. And so Martin Luther is actually responsible. Actually, again, Johann Gutenberg is responsible for the American Revolution because of, printing the Bible, Martin Luther reading the Bible, Martin Luther translating the Bible into German, making pamphlets on a printing press, getting the word out, causing these other denominations to rise, causing these groups to split from the Catholic Church. One of those groups settles in the colonies of North America. They make Massachusetts and, write a Declaration of Independence and throw tea in a harbor and start boycotting. And so you see, Johann Gutenberg. But the fact that the Puritans could read and begin to understand and interpret how these things affect their lives is how it's like an undercurrent as to why the revolution began there. That's just a thing. All right, and there is Mr. Calvin. All right, and there is another reformer. Okay, those are Puritans. Okay, now because we have two different religious groups, and one group doesn't want to lose their power, and one group is tired of being bullied by the one that doesn't want to lose their power, we're going to have wars because, Europe, war, religion, as Raging the Machine would say, killing in the name of. Catholics and Lutherans oppose Calvinists. Wars between Catholics and Calvinists in France. Calvinists are prosecuted in the Netherlands. Some Calvinists fled to America for religious freedom. Remember, if you are a religious person taking a religious trip, you're a pilgrim. Pilgrims. In Scotland, Calvinist John Knox overthrew a Catholic queen. So there are conflicts between both sides, between different groups in the same side, but there are religious wars in Europe, 1530 to 1640-ish. I do know that one war started in Europe when a guy got thrown out a window. That's pretty cool. In what is now, I think, Czechoslovakia. Oh, sorry, Czechia. All right. Henry VIII, our third reformer. Tell me how I'm supposed to breathe with no air. Love this person. Okay. While Martin Luther and John Calvin abandoned the Catholic Church for spiritual reasons, Henry VIII was motivated by political and personal concerns. The Tudor dynasty, Henry VIII's family, came to power after a bloody civil war that resulted from the lack of male heir when Henry's father, Henry VII, took control by force. Henry VIII was determined to avoid this fate. So again, not having children is a problem in monarchs. Male children. It's just preferred that it's a dude. But if all else fails, Elizabeth. Okay. So Henry reforms. He's the first. He was a Catholic, and again, like Martin Luther, um, not ready to throw it out, and would not have left the Catholic Church if he'd been able to get what he wanted from the Pope. And what is that, you ask? Well, he wanted to divorce his wife, Catherine of Aragon. He wanted to divorce her. Pope being the Pope, he also wanted to gain land from the Catholic Church in England for his wealthier subjects. So he wanted to get some of the land. Again, remember, the Catholic Church owns a lot of land. He wanted to get some of that land and give it to his wealthy supporters. Because remember, going back to feudalism, look at that connection all the time, connecting all the time. If I can keep my immediate threats close to me, this goes back to Sun Tzu. If I can keep my immediate threats close to me, I can keep an eye on them. And if they're happy, if I can give them land and they can do what they want with that land and make lots of money and rule over people, they're less likely to want to come after me. So, as favors to these people for supporting him, and as a way to keep them supporting him, he wants some land. There he is again. By the way, when he was first king, not that heavy. The Pope refused his divorce because in the Catholic Church, for the longest time, divorces aren't recognized. In fact, today, I know someone who is divorced and they want to marry someone they've been seeing, and the someone they're seeing is Catholic, but the Catholic Church has to recognize and annul her first marriage, or they can't do it in the Catholic Church. So even today, divorce is not taken lightly in the Catholic Church. I thought that was interesting. There's Catherine of Aragon looking distraught. Sorry, Catherine. Actually, I'll be Henry. Sorry, Catherine. All right. England reforms. He broke off from the Catholic Church, created the Anglican Church. I'm Henry VIII. I'm the King of England. The Catholic Church is being a toolbox. I don't want to listen to them. I want to divorce this woman and take some land. I'll make my own church. I'm the King of England. I'll call it the Church of England. Ta-da! And he is the head of the church and the state, kind of like Constantine. The Anglican Church was pretty much the Catholic Church, but by a different name. It's like Episcopalian is sometimes called Catholic light. It's all the ceremony, half the guilt, is sort of the Episcopalian Church. I was baptized as a wee lad Episcopalian, but couldn't tell you anything about doctrine or anything because I was a little kid. But he just did this so that he could control what goes on in his country. So again, this isn't really for religious reasons. Can I make these smaller? That's not really for religious reasons. All right. I don't know where to go. Anyway, the word there is both. Okay. Those are all his wives: Catherine of Aragon, Anne Boleyn, Jane Seymour, Anne of Cleves, Catherine Howard, and Catherine Parr. One of them did give him a son, but he was very weak and feeble and infirmed, and he didn't live very long. So I can't make myself smaller either. All right, well, there. Okay. All right, so this is what happens now. We have Christianity. You got the Catholic Church. The Protestant Church comes off the Catholic Church, and then the Eastern Orthodox Church. And notice they don't have the Eastern Orthodox Church connected. I don't know about that, and I'm not going to get all nitpicky about it. But it definitely sees itself differently than the Catholic Church. And remember, for those reasons why, like the patriarchs, the head of the churches in the Eastern Orthodox Church, are chosen by the ruler. They could marry. They don't like all the there's not going to be a whole bunch of paintings and icons of Mary and things like that in the Orthodox Church. Service is in Greek, not in Latin. Those are the big things. Then you have the Protestant churches, which is all those denominations that come from uh, Martin Luther. And again, this is just showing you a flow chart: early Christians, Roman Catholics, Eastern Orthodox. Then you have Greek and Russian Orthodox here, Roman Catholics, the Moravians, Lutherans, the Anglican Church. Then these are all different. Let me get me out of the way. These are all different Protestant churches: Quakers, Seventh-day Adventists, Episcopalian, the Holiness, Methodist, Baptist, Congregational, the Salvation Army. Interesting. Church of God in Indiana, Church of Christ, Church of God in Cleveland, Tennessee, Assemblies of God, Church of Nazarene. Anyway, all these people. Then over here, you have Reformed churches, Catholic churches, conservative churches, but Reformed, Church of Scotland, Anabaptist, Presbyterian, Mennonites, Amish, those people. Okay, so even there are different groups. And then to look at, and again, don't commit this to memory, just know, basically the Greens are Protestants, which are markedly different from Catholics. These are Catholic lights. These are the further down you go, the more removed you are from Catholicism. Or you can look at it this way. Again, Christianity, Eastern Orthodox. I guess no one sees Eastern Orthodox as being okay. So I guess the assumption is that, or the assertion, sorry, is that until Rome falls, there's no truly Roman Catholic Church. It's just Christianity. And then after the fall of Rome, they go to Western Europe, they go to Eastern Europe, and then, okay, all right, I'll buy that for $1. Okay, so the fall of Rome is the linchpin. All right, the Catholic Reformation. Now, of course, by the way, that ends the Reformation from the Protestant end. Go ahead and take a break if you want. Pause here. This is the response from the Catholic Church. As you could imagine, there's going to be a response from the Catholic Church. And then our unit will be over, and tomorrow we'll get to talk about all those rulers who use this newfound freedom from the Catholic Church while at the same time using the power of the Catholic Church, or the Church regardless, to their own benefit. But that's just a little foreshadowing. It's a teaser for tomorrow. All right. Catholic response. So, because of what they did, they were able to, as I alluded earlier, keep Catholicism solidly in Southern and Eastern Europe. So that was good for the Catholics. But there are probably also other reasons you could think about. There are so many reasons to think. Anyway, about as to why Protestantism is so much more successful the further north you go in Europe. All right, but we'll see. Maybe we'll talk about that. The Council of Trent met, and they refuted Protestant tenets or Protestant ideals. So they come together to refute, talk down, shoot down what the Protestants are preaching, and then reassess their values and tweak theirs to stop the hemorrhaging, to stop people from leaving the Catholic Church. A new religious order, the Jesuits, founded by Ignatius of Loyola, become active in politics, education, and missionary work, especially in Asia and Americas. So again, now there's an active zeal to go and recruit. And keep this in the back of your mind. Go back to the beginning into why Martin Luther and John Calvin were angry in the first place. If you lose membership, you lose money. So again, how much of this desire is for souls and how much of that is for wallets? And I know that seems cynical, but you have to look at things multiple ways. And there's Mr. Ignatius again, Mr. Ignatius of Loyola. So all those Loyola, Marymount, all those colleges of Loyola are all Jesuit colleges in America. All right. In 1545, the Pope called this Council of Trent a meeting of Catholic bishops and cardinals to establish a unified response. So again, let's get the Catholic Church on one page, have one mission, one voice. And they do this by creating a church doctrine. And and a whole church belief system that is tied in the idea that, well, this is a big one right here, that the Catholic Church's interpretation is final and all other interpretations are wrong. It's not open to lay people or you, me, anybody who goes to a church. Lay people don't have the authority to interpret what the Bible is saying. So that's the first thing, and that's the largest. I would I would argue, and again, if you are practicing Catholic or much more practicing Protestant, I think that's the largest fundamental difference between the two denominations in the Christian faith is who dispenses. How does one gather information about God? And in the Catholic Church, it comes from the priest, and in the Protestant churches, it depends, but it doesn't necessarily have to just come from the priest. The second thing, faith's not enough. And this is a direct rejection to Martin Luther's whole idea. Because remember, too, early on, this is early stages. You got lots of people sitting on the fence trying to figure out which way they're going to go. So if you can tell them, if you do that, you're wrong. And remember, if you're wrong in the Catholic Church, if you go against the Catholic Church, you might get excommunicated. If you're the other one, the interdict, that is more towards mayors, governors, kings. If you are a king or a person in authority and you speak out against the Catholic Church, an interdiction is when they excommunicate your entire town because of what you believe. And that's a sure way to not be king or lord anymore. So it's a pretty effective tool. They also believe church doctrine was equal to the Bible as a source of religious truth. So the rules, the ceremony, everything that the Catholic Church wrote was on par with God. They did acknowledge that the corruption was a problem, including what some priests and some clergy were saying with respect to the indulgences. They did not end indulgences; they just tweaked what they could do, what they could not do, and things of that sort. In the end, this Counter-Reformation or the Catholic Reformation slowed the spread of Catholicism into southern and east. Wait, let me raise myself up so you can see me. Into southern and eastern Europe. Okay, so it slowed it there. It probably tried its best to slow it in the north, but they're just going to keep pockets. It was pretty successful in slowing it down in France for a while, and you'll get huge wars in France over religions. Another thing they did during this time period was the Inquisition, which nobody expects. And the Inquisition was a way to get people to reconvert. They would torture people and they would convert back to Catholicism because you were seen as being a heretic, and then you could convert and cleanse your soul, and off you go. That's the Council of Trent, a lovely rendition. This is just showing you, again, sort of a map showing you what's going on in the world. 1517, Martin Luther. 1534, then it's Henry VIII, breaks from the church. 1536, John Calvin in Geneva, Switzerland. 1542 is when the Roman Catholic Church, or when Rome, creates the Inquisition. So you can see, 25 years, a lot happens, and that's pretty quick when you consider, it's word of mouth, or now it's, printed movable text. So that's a good thing. But that's just showing you what's going on and then what happens during this time period. Notice not Italy. Notice not Germany. Where is it? Amsterdam is actually still part of Spain during that time period. So that's what's going on in Western Europe during this time period. Feel free to peruse that map at your leisure. And then this just gives you a religious breakdown by faith. I'll cover Ireland. Ireland is Roman Catholic, except for Oh yeah, it's not the north yet. So Ireland is predominantly Roman Catholic, and then you can see the different colors here. There are not a whole lot. There are a couple of Jewish dots, random little dots of other things, like a bunch of little Calvinists in here. But again, France, Spain, Portugal, the Italian states, there's a lot of Catholicism here. And England's going to have a number of wars over religion. Anglicans versus Catholics, and then one king brings Catholicism back, and they torment the Protestants, and then one ruler will be a Protestant, and they torment Catholics, and it goes on and on and on until England has no king, and we'll get to that. No monarch. Okay, so this is John Green on the Renaissance. You can watch this at your leisure. Okay. So what happens at the end of all this? The idea, the umbrella of Christian of unity, the umbrella of one church apostolic is over. You had German Protestants and Swedish Lutherans versus the Holy Roman Emperor, backed by Spain. This is all part of the 30 Years' War. 60% of Germany's population dies in this fighting. The Treaty of Westphalia, this right here, this ends this fighting, and it grants tolerance. Again, tolerance does not mean you accept them. Tolerance means you don't arrest them. You don't persecute them. It doesn't mean that you're willing to listen to them. Tolerance is a lazy, lazy word. I don't want, as a first step, I hope you're all tolerant. But you need to move past tolerance into understanding and acceptance. It goes back to the single story video. But what it does do is that it gives both sides pause. They both tolerate the other side, stop persecuting them. They may not let them have government jobs. They may not let them have, it may not be equal and fair, but they're not killing them. The Netherlands got their independence from Spain. And the reason I circled the Peace of Westphalia is because I think that's a neat starting off point for when World War I started. All right, that's just another little kernel there for you. Okay. So that's some unity dying in the West. Oh, yeah. Series of religious wars. In France, Calvinists versus Catholics. The Edict of Nantes in 1598 grants tolerance to the Huguenots, which were the Calvinists in France. So now there's religious tolerance in France as well. In Germany, the 30 Years' War, like I said, ends in 1648. Look, a war that actually lasted 30 years. Actually lasted the time it was called. The 100 Years' War lasts 100 years, but it's not 100 years of fighting, because back in those days, you used to break for the winter, or you'd break for planting or harvest. So it just took over 100 years to carry out. My favorite example is the 7 Years' War, which is what the rest of the world called it. The French and Indian War is what Americans call it, but the 7 Years' War lasted 9 years. One of those kind of things. All right. The Korean War technically isn't over. It's just been in a perpetual ceasefire. Weird. All right. The end of Christian unity in the West and more. In England, civil war from 1640 to 1660. Absolute civil war. Religious issues. Claims of Parliament to rights to control over royal actions. In 1688-89, limited toleration was granted to most Protestants, but not Catholics. 1689 is when the English Bill of Rights is written. And it's a precursor to our Bill of Rights, just like Magna Carta is sort of the precursor to limited government. Limited toleration was given to Protestants, but not the Catholics, which should probably tell you that it wasn't a Catholic running the country. Oh, who's that? Yes, okay. That's Oliver Cromwell. He is the Lord Protector. Oliver Cromwell, we'll talk about him more Tuesday. Oliver Cromwell was a Puritan. Oliver Cromwell was a very, very strict Puritan. And we'll talk about, I don't want to steal all his thunder right now. Those are not the Three Musketeers. Those are more people in England during the Civil War. All right, that's Charles I. Charles I is the only, well, we'll get to that later too. So these are the two people that conflict during this time period mainly. Okay, so religious wars lead to limited acceptance of religious pluralism, meaning everybody's Christian, right? But we're never going to be one Christian body again. There is begrudging acceptance to the fact that other Christian groups exist. Fine, but we're never going to be one big happy family again. And you probably could have seen that coming if you go back to the Eastern Orthodox Church. Once, wait, what am I doing down here? Once they attack Constantinople in the Fourth Crusade, you kind of think there's no chance of reconciliation. Led some people to be suspect of religion, that there could be a dominant single truth. So you are going to see, beginning from that moment to now, this idea that maybe there's not just one answer. And it also affects the balance of power with respect to which church body, with respect to in your local town, is it the king or is it the pope? So there's now, a struggle for who's going to have the power. And that ends, yes, and that ends our video. So thank you very much. Those are your notes. I will see you all tomorrow when we discuss absolutism and what this balance of power struggle is all about. When we get to tomorrow and we start realizing and looking at how kings and queens used either the newfound freedom of the Protestant faith or the ally of the Pope in the Catholic Church